everybody, my name is Mikayla and I work here at trueCABLE in our marketing team, and today we're going to go over some customer questions and put Don and Dave to the test.
I'm Don, and by now you might know me because I have been doing a lot of technical videos for YouTube and putting out blogs on our website and our Cable Academy. I've been with trueCABLE for 3 years. I'm the technical manager, and my responsibilities are quality, product design and development, and also content. The video that you're watching right now, the YouTube, the blogs, etc., etc. And we recently hired in someone to augment me and add a new dimension to trueCABLE, and that would be Dave Harris. Hi.
Our first customer question for today is, are load bar or pass-through RJ45s better?
Load bar. Yeah, I would say load bar, especially when it comes to Cat6a. Like, we have a stagger RJ45 plug that's a so-called standard plug at solid nose, but it uses a load bar, and the load bar is position sensitive. It's green colored, and it does stagger the conductors. And it with Cat6a specifically, if you're running it to see if you want to certify it to Cat6a, you're actually trying to push it to 10 gigabit. That greatly reduces crosstalk at the connector, as I have found out. It has no impact at all. The stagger load bar style plug has no impact performance-wise on Cat6 or Cat5e, and I've proven that with the Fluke DSX8000 as well. So I would say pass-throughs have their place. I would restrict the use of pass-throughs to Cat6 and Cat5e and make sure they're well fit, and make sure you're using them sparingly and not trying to make your own patch cords. And if you're going to need to terminate solid copper category 6A, and that cable needs to perform, and you have no alternative but to put on a RJ45, then the load bar plug is your best bet.
Is it okay to make my own patch cables?
No. You should buy factory pre-made, pre-terminated patch cords, especially if you're making patch cords from solid copper Ethernet. Let me subdivide that answer. It's a little more complicated than it sounds. If you're using stranded copper Ethernet, and that would mean the conductor is stranded, not solid, and you've got the proper fitting RJ45 plug, and you're willing to test your patch cables to make sure they actually work, sure, go for it. If, on the other hand, you are making patch cords from solid copper Ethernet and you want to use RJ45s, that is probably the least best way of going about it. If you want to make a patch cord that actually works and it's like a critical application, then I would strongly recommend field termination plugs, not RJ45s. Has to do with the fact that no matter how well we control the tolerances on our Ethernet cable insulated conductor, RJ45s, it's just the nature of the beast. Eventually you're going to get one, or maybe even a run of them, where they're not going to fit just perfectly to perform to your expectations.
Why does trueCABLE focus on compatibility and selling items together as a system?
The thing is that a lot of people don't understand that a category 6 plug is not really a category 6 plug. RJ45 plugs, APAC plugs, things like that, they don't really have a category on them. It's just a piece of plastic with 8 golden contacts. So it's all about fitment. So when we're talking about compatibility, we're talking about fitment. And you need to take all of your tools, your plugs, your cable, and make sure everything works well together, so that when you come to trueCABLE as a one-stop shop, you're getting a much greater possibility of a working installation off the start line. Nothing's more frustrating than buying a bunch of different components from a bunch of different manufacturers and finding out that there is some sort of nuance there that prevents you from doing what you want to do or getting the performance you want to get.
Mm-hmm. And you'll find this is true of all cable manufacturers. And you can't mix and match because, like Don said, it's all about fitment. It's not about category. You can get category 5E cable that's 22 gauge. You can get category 5E cable that's 24 gauge. The RJ45s for one will not fit the other. So it's not enough to say that this is a 5E end.
Is there a difference between Ethernet and Internet?
Ethernet's a protocol that you run between the devices in your network. The Internet is the network outside your local network, often called a WAN, Wide Area Network. So Ethernet is a protocol for accessing the Internet, might be a good way to put it.
The way I like to characterize it to help really bring it home to people, it helps them visualize it, is that Ethernet cable is used for local area networks. That is a site, a building, a house, or something. Internet is what's known as a wide area network. It's a perfect example. There's multiple kinds of wide area networks. The internet is probably the penultimate example of a wide area network because it encompasses, basically the definition of a WAN, or a wide area network, is a conglomeration of many different LANs that can somehow all communicate with each other in some fashion. You can have a local area network, a LAN, with using Ethernet cable and Wi-Fi and stuff like that, and have no access to the internet, which is another network. That's the WAN side. So you have no access out through a gateway, but you need to do file sharing and other activities inside your business, but you don't want people getting out on the internet. A good example of where that would be used is a U.S. military installation.
What is low voltage wire commonly used for?
Low voltage wire is commonly used for data communication, fire alarm controls, security systems, IP cameras. In other words, anything that's considered AC, 120 volt or higher branch circuit is considered to be high voltage according to the National Electric Code. Anything that's operating under that is considered to be into the low voltage category.
Can I use unshielded terminations on shielded cable?
Only if you want trouble. If you get it to fit right, it'll work. It'll seem to work, but you're setting yourself up for potential issues. The biggest being that if you have a shielded cable and you're using unshielded terminations at both ends, there's no way for that cable shield to drain off to bond and drain off to ground. So therefore, the cable shield may actually pick up and induce interference on your cable pairs as opposed to mitigate them. And the reason why that is because the cable shield is a channel down to ground. It's not, you're talking about thin foil shielding inside of a cable. That's not going to block really, really high EMI. What it does is it channels it down. It's used as a path, not a block. Another reason you get yourself into trouble with that would be electrostatic discharge. If you need to drain off electrostatic discharge, there's no path for that to occur. So a lightning strike could cause more damage than it should, or you may not have any damage at all had you not done it properly. So,
and an ungrounded shielded cable is a big antenna.
Yes,
And it will
could function as an antenna.
Actually attract EMI.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask the reverse, can you use shielded ends on unshielded cable? Well, it'll work, but then you've got an unshielded cable that looks like a shielded cable because it's got shielded ends on it, and people are likely to misidentify it in the future. So
it's technically bad form.
Right.
Is shielded Ethernet cable better to use?
Shielded Ethernet cable has its place. No, the answer is no and yes at the same time. First of all, a lot of people misunderstand shielding and what it's used for and the perception around shielding. So a lot of people buy shielded cable thinking, oh, it's shielded. I mean, this must be better, faster, stronger. The fact is that shielding can actually introduce far more trouble into your network than if you didn't use it at all. Cable shield is designed to mitigate factors such as electromagnetic interference, that being from like high voltage motors or AC branch circuits that are running in your walls and other factors like that. The shielding is designed to head off an issue from occurring. in of itself, shielding does not increase performance.
If everything is connected to the Wi-Fi, then why do we need Ethernet cable?
A direct connection, a wired connection to your internet, to your Ethernet, your network, is more secure and it's faster.
Don't use Wi-Fi unless you've got really no other alternative. Smartphones, laptops, for example, without Ethernet connections, tablets, things that you have no ability to plug in. But if it's feasible and reasonable to plug it in, you should be plugging it in. If it's something that is critical, high reliability, needs a connection that's stable at all times, plug it in. The reason being that Wi-Fi is highly susceptible to, there's two frequency spectrums that are being used, 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz for Wi-Fi. Now, 5 gigahertz is not as much interference on it, although that's changing. But the problem with 5 gigahertz is as clear air as it is, it's got a shorter range and very poor object penetration, especially concrete, glass, things like that. So it may give you higher speed, but it's going to give you greatly reduced range. 2.4 gigahertz, on the other hand, can go through at least one concrete wall, and it gives you a much better range, but it's lower speed and it's far more susceptible to interference because it actually only operates on 3 discrete channels. Even though you see like channels 1 through 11, it's not really 1 through, well, I mean, I suppose you could call it 1 through 11, but the real discrete channels are 1, 6, and 11, and everything else is sharing those bandwidths of the other channels. So you're going to get a congested network real quick. So not only do you have interference from your neighbor's network, but you're susceptible to a badly behaved microwave oven. You're susceptible to a baby monitor, to a garage door opener, or something else that's misbehaved. So I have seen entire Wi-Fi installations brought down by somebody who bought a cheap microwave from some big box store I won't name, turned it on, and everything came to a screeching halt while the microwave was on. Then everything was fine right after the microwave got turned off. So reliability is your primary concern when it comes to using Ethernet over Wi-Fi, and speed is a close second, and security is a close third. Security is not as much of an issue anymore because of newer Wi-Fi protected access protocols like WPA3, but when it comes to networking, Ethernet, or basically wiring, whether it's fiber or copper, is king and always will be king.
What is the difference between trueCABLE's small and large cut-to-fit strain relief boots?
If you look at them side by side, you're like, I have no idea what the difference is between these guys. And what it has to do with is not the size of the strain relief boot itself. It has to do with the vertical height of these locking bars that go into the back of RJ45 plugs. So this is a small cut-to-fit. And so the difference is that the small cut-to-fit boot, it takes the same cable overall diameters as the large cut-to-fit. It's just that these locking bars here actually fit inside the so-called Cat5e plug, physically speaking. So this would be a loose fit in our so-called Cat6 pass-through plugs or Cat6 6A load bar plugs. Where the large cut-to-fit won't fit into our so-called Cat5e plug at all. And it has to do with the fact that the bars back here are too big vertically. It won't go in all the way. So it's either a really tight fit or it won't actually go in. So that's essentially the difference, is the height of the bars. And if I could get a close-up photo for you here, you'd see about maybe it's a very small, almost imperceptible difference, but it's about 0.5 millimeter. That's about the difference. It has to do with the rear entry into the plug itself.
When terminating my cable, should I use a field term plug or RJ45 connector?
If you're using Cat6A and you need an RJ45 plug on the end of it, the field term plug is your best choice because it has circuitry in there to make sure that there are no differences in impedance in the channel. Best way to say that is it's impedance matched to the cable. A plastic RJ45 connector doesn't do that, and so you get better performance with the field term plug, and it's more likely to certify at Cat 6A.
There are certain situations where you might have to use a RJ45. I'll give you a good example. Here at our installation at our warehouse, we have a number of MPTL or modular plug terminated links. They're 270 feet long. They were D-rated according to maximum possible temperature they might be exposed to out in the warehouse. So they're running from a Keystone jack patch panel, and they're running up and over and out, and then they're terminating to load bar RJ45s, and that's category 6A cable. Now those run certified, even though I'm using an RJ45, but the plug was properly fit, and I'm using a load bar plug, and it's certified, and I know it works. A field termination plug, though, takes a lot of the fitment problems out of the equation. RJ45s are notoriously problematic when it comes to fitment onto solid copper Ethernet cable, and also not just fitment issues, but just reliability, mechanical reliability. They're not very stable mechanically. So if it's not perfect, then if you can't get it perfect, or if you can't find the right plug especially, or if you can get away with it at all, use field term plugs. That's going to give you the best performance every time.
Is your most expensive cable your best cable? So for us, that would be Cat 6A Plenum shielded.
No, you only need plenum if you have a certain installation requirement. If you are pulling your cable above a suspended ceiling, which is a plenum space, you need to use plenum cable in most every case. If you're pulling through a cold air return or some kind of other HVAC duct, you have to use plenum. It's because of the characteristics that it has during a fire, the products that it puts off when it burns. So plenum is more expensive because it takes special materials to make sure that it meets those qualifications.
Half the weight, yeah, I'll interject there, half the weight of a plenum cable jacket is Teflon, micronized Teflon.
What kind of cable do I use for HDBaseT?
HDBaseT? Yeah, that's the HDBaseT is a protocol. It's not a cable. And I believe the HDBaseT Alliance, I think they're called, or HDBase Alliance or something like that, they recommend at least category 6, and I think they're giving a preference to category 6A, and I think they even throw shielded in there for some unknown reason that I don't necessarily agree with, but I believe we're talking about Ethernet cable. So any Ethernet cable that passes category certification, that's category 6 or higher, is going to be more than enough for HDBaseT. More than enough.
Okay, we have a live question. So could you expand on why use T568A versus T568B versus, I haven't heard this one yet, USOC?
USOC? USOC isn't used for networking. USOC is an old standard that was used for previous application protocols and technologies. T568A and B are the only two approved color code standards for modern data networking. There is no discernible advantage of T568A over B, and I've tested it that way. I've done a fluke test with an identical cable, identical jacks, identical day, identical cable length, identical temperature, terminated both ends to A, then I ran the test and I terminated both ends to B, and bam, it was the same performance. So there's no advantage in performance. As long as you're wiring it A to A or B to B in your modern data network, you have no issues, proceed as you like.
Main thing is to stay consistent within your installation. Use the same one everywhere. And having said that, I mean, I've worked a lot of installation jobs over the years, and I have not had a single customer specify 568A. So I won't say that it's getting to be an industry standard, but
B is the de facto standard nowadays.
I guess. And I'll say it again, over the last 10 or so years, I have done new installs in many government buildings, many military installations and many brand new schools, and I've never had someone specify 568A.
And that's a wrap for today's Q&A with Don and Dave. Comment below some more questions so we can put them to the test again next time.
Please do.